Hello, welcome to another episode of 3D Drawing for Your Model Railway. In this episode I'm going to produce something that's going to supplement the crane that we're producing at the moment. This is a part of a substation for Southern Region 3rd Rail supply, and this small building here, small hut here, we believe was transported to site on the back of flat roll wagons without the top part here. This was transported separately and without this part on the side. So this was transported on the back of a flat roll wagon to site, and then the crane that we're currently designing in the other series was used to lift this from the wagon into its final position. Now we have a photograph. Unfortunately, I can't share it of this wagon actually this building actually loaded on the back of a wagon. I can't share it because it doesn't belong to anyone who's given me copyright permission. What we don't have though is any photographic evidence of any of the other buildings being transported to the site. We know transformers went on the back of wagons, so those we could produce to be printed off and loaded in the low max or flat roll wagons. We don't have any picture of this one, but if this is a similar sort of size, which we believe it is to this one, then there's no reason potentially why both of them can't be transported. But we do have, as I say, a photograph of this one, so I'm going to produce this model without the pod on the roof and without this box on the side. Obviously I've got the dimensions. If you wanted to produce this you could do, and you could also produce this bit to be a static model at the side, but I'm just producing the main hut here. So here's the picture of the scale plan that Paul supplied me. Now this is the hut that we're building here. You can see the side on view, the rear view here that also has a couple of small panels on it. This is the transformer that's on the side, and obviously the dimensions that are all mentioned here are in inches. So you obviously just need to convert this to whatever scale you're going to be using. Okay, so if we jump into Fusion, we're just going to create a sketch. We're going to draw the footprint of the building. So if we start with a center point rectangle and just drag out, don't worry about the dimensions for the moment. So if we jump into the picture here, so we've got 99 inches across, and then 99 inches works out as 2,514.6 millimeters. So if we're back into Fusion, we can define that as 2,514.6, and that's millimeters, and we can divide it by whatever scale you want to go. So I'm going N gauge, so divide by 1.48, and that puts it down to the correct size for N gauge. Okay, so if we now look at the length, so the overall length here is 147 inches. Jump back into the internet, 147 inches works out as 3733.8. So we can define that there, and then divide it by 148. So we've got our exact sizes now. Okay, so we now look at the height. So the height's going to be 109 inches. So 2768.6. So if we copy that, we can bring that into Fusion. If we can extrude the building upwards, we'll put the size into this box at Control V and then divide by 148. So we now get the height being correct height, which I think I said 18.7. So that's how you can take known dimensions in any scale. Obviously you just need to use a converter on the internet to work from, say, inches to millimeters, whatever you need to go between, and then you can change the dimension within Fusion by just typing in the original in millimeters and then dividing it by the scale that you want to go. So if you wanted to go in 00, it'd be divided by 76.2, HR I think it's 87, and N scale in America is 160. You know, it's whatever scale you need to work towards. Right, so now that we've got this basic shape, what I'm going to look at is, it doesn't show up particularly well in the photos, but there's like a framing all the way around the outside of the building. So I'm going to draw those frames onto the building now. So come into Fusion. Actually, if we just have a quick look at the, so Paul hasn't measured them unfortunately. Yes, he has. 8 inches. Okay, so 8 inches works out 203.2 millimeters. So if we come back to, if we go to this picture, what we can see is the top and the bottom one go edge to edge, and then the side frames go between them. So if we come back into Fusion, I'm going to draw just a sketch on this surface here. I'm going to use a simple 2-point rectangle just to create the depression for the recess. So if I'm defining the top edge to there, okay, so it's going to be 203 millimeters, 0.2 divided by 148. So that's now going to put it at 1.373. Between the two parts of the recess, I'm going to go for 0.25 millimeters. Okay, and then I'm going to recess this smaller section just into the body by 0.3 millimeters to create, actually, wait a minute, that was plus, it should be a minus 0.3. It's going to have to be 0.6 now. It's still only 0. Okay, so that's playing up. So I'm going to delete that feature. I'm going to go back into the sketch, select that part, extrude, minus 0.3. There you go, you can see that it's cut into. Okay, so that's top and bottom, it's the same position top and bottom. So what you could do is you could just copy that down, or the other option is you could mirror it as well. Okay, so to mirror this, we create mid-plane mirrors, so we can use top surface and bottom surface. Okay, so now we've got that mid-plane. We can also create another mid-plane. It's an offset one. Create a mid-plane from the front surface to the back surface. So we've now got 2 mid-planes working through the body. So to copy that one from top to bottom, we just mirror and then features, select that feature, select the mid-plane and put it at the bottom. Now if we do mirror, same features again, so if we select that feature plus the mirror, the bottom one, and then change the mirror plane to the one that goes vertically, click on OK, we've now got that mirror on both sides. Okay, so the next part I'm going to draw is the 2 upright supports that go down each corner. And we're going to do the same thing. What's that drawing? That should be snapping. Let's just delete that. I think I might select the plane. Let's draw on that front face there. Turn rectangle. Okay, it's not going to snap to the top and bottom there. Let's turn off the construction plane so it's cleaner. Okay, and we just have, so we're going to be 0.25 wide. And I'm going to coincidence that to that line, and that to that line. Okay. And then if we look at the distance here, we inspect from the top surface to that first line, we know that it's 1.373 millimeters. So we can define from that edge to the edge of the model 1.373 millimeters. It's giving us our scale 8 inches. We select that profile and then we can extrude that by minus 0.3 millimeters, and that should cut into the body. Okay. And if we just check up here, make sure that, let's turn that sketch So we've got the cut out here. And we've got one at the bottom. Okay. So we can copy this across this way again. We don't have a mid-plane in that direction, so we can create another one of those. Select that side face and that side face. Okay, we've now got pretty much mid-planes everywhere. We can create a mirror again, selecting the feature, which is that one we've just drawn. Knew that would be an issue, so we're going to have to change that to faces. Okay, and if we select that side face, that upright, zoom back out. It's going to create a plane here. Let's delete that face off a bit, and we'll do that side face. Select the middle plane being the midpoint. Click on OK, and that's not working. Okay, so you see how that's now going to be a pane. So we can't mirror that across. Pattern would be a problem as well. So it's probably just as easy to go back into the sketch, edit the sketch, and draw another one of them. Like that. Define dimensions we know from side to plane is 1.373. Thickness 0.25. And then we can extrude that minus 0.3. Turn that sketch off, so now we've got that. Okay. What we might just do if I delete that mirror, so now we don't have that on the rear, we can then just mirror features. If we select all of those across on that midpoint, click on OK, and just spin that round to the rear. So we've now got that on the back as well. That's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. So extrude the top one, and then we mirrored it down on the mid-plane, and then we've drawn the two uprights, and then mirrored that across on the mid-plane as well. Okay, so now we'll do the same process but on the end. So if I turn these construction planes off, we'll just spin this round on the model here, face on, create a sketch on this front face here. So I'm going to just draw the lines across. They're already there, so there's no point mirroring these because it's just as easy and quick to do that. Okay, so that's those ones. Okay, and then we're going to want the uprights to come down as well. Just try to start the right one, that's it. So we want 0.25 wide. That height's correct, I'm happy with that. Define from the front face to the front of the edge as 1.373, which is the 8 inches we're working to. And then do the same on this side. So 0.25 wide. From the front edge, 1.373. Okay, and then if we just select all of these profiles, right click, extrude, and we're going to extrude by minus 0.3 again. Okay, so knowing how the patterning is working, okay, and how it will be a pain to copy this pattern across, potentially, you can try it. If it doesn't, then what we'll do is we'll split the body in half and then just mirror the body. So if we mirror the feature being that the recess we've just done, I'm not sure what all the lines going back down into the model are for. We'll have a look and see what happens when we mirror it on that mirror plane there. Click on OK. Okay, actually it looks like it's come out okay. The other option I was going to use was to split the body. So you can split the body, use the mirror to split it, and then come up to the bodies. Doesn't matter which one you select, you just can remove it, and then do mirror, change that to body, select the body, mirror plane, turn those mirror planes off, we just mirror on that inside wall, click on OK, and you get the same effect. Okay, I'm going to leave that in the CAD. It's not going to make much difference how mine's going to perform because it's only going to be a couple of operations, but you don't need to do that. That's just to give you an example of how you can go around mirroring objects which are perfectly symmetrical. So the next object I'm going to mirror is the doorway. Let's just have a look at the sketch here. We've got the door here. So we've got 30 inches across the door, 78 inches tall, and it's 10.5 inches from the inside face. So if we jump to Fusion, doesn't matter which of the side panels you choose, it's completely up to you. I'm just going to select this one, and then we're going to draw the doorway in. And I'm making sure that I'm not going to snap it to any of the other walls because I don't want the dimensions to be off or constrained in any other way. So the first dimension I'm going to add in is the 10.5 inches that is from the side of the building to the door, so that's 266.7 millimeters. So that's going to be from the side of the building to the door, and it was 266.7 divided by 148 for engage. Okay. Now it's going to give us that tiny little gap there, which is fine because I'm actually going to recess inwards, make the door ever so slightly smaller so we can have that recessed panel effect that we've got here. If we look at the next dimension, it was 30 inches wide, which is 762 millimeters. Define that. 762 divided by 148. Okay, and then the last of the dimensions here was 78 inches tall. Go into this one first. 78 inches is 1981.2. Divided by 148. Okay, so you can see how that's dragged that down. We actually need to move the whole thing up. Okay. Is there a dimension for the height? So just looking around here. Doesn't look like we've got a dimension defined for the height. So we're going to work off the picture and just go by guess. So for me that looks like the bottom of the door is pretty much where the frame going across the bottom is. So I'm going to drag that whole lot up, and then I'm going to coincidence that corner to that line. So that's now going to snap into the correct position. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to be looking to do is do an offset on there. So I'm offsetting this to create the framing for the door. So I'm going to use 0.2 millimeter offset. And then I'm going to select that inner panel, and I'm going to extrude that by minus 0.3 to create that recessed panel for the door. Okay, now I know we've got a gap here, but if we look on the photo, what they've actually done is they've got a little door step there, and they've also got a range strip above the door which we can draw on now. So to create that door step effect, I'm going to go back into that recessed panel that we just drawn. I'm going to draw a rectangle, and you can see that it goes on the picture from the side of the door, and that's pretty much all it does. I'm going to extrude this forwards, so that's going to close that original gap up. I'm actually going to step it out by 0.3 millimeters. Tell that to join. So we've now got our door step effect on the bottom there. The range strip, if we look at the picture now, what we've got here is we've got the drain, and obviously that's not transported with the drain, that's an after fitting. this range strip goes from the side of the door and actually protrudes past it. I'm going to create a sketch on the front face here. I'm going to create a rectangle. I want it to be in line with the top of the door there. I'm going to come out and along past it. It's up to you how far you find the length here. For me, it looks like it's maybe 6 inches or so past there. So I'm going to go for 6.5 millimeters. Okay, and I'm going to define the height of it as 0.3 millimeters. I'm actually going to drag the whole lot upwards, and then I'm going to constrain that bottom point with that line, so now snapped into position there. And then I can extrude that forwards 0.3 to give the relief, tell it to join. So that's our little range strip that goes above the doorway there. If we look at the picture, that's sort of the effect we're getting here. Now the door handle, I'm not entirely sure, it looks like it's just like a little round knob rather than a normal handle that you would see. So that's about this sort of height. There's no measurement for that. So on that door, I'm just going to create a circle, this sort of position, and I'm going to go to 0.5 millimeters. Define its position, clear to the door, 0.75 will do, and its height, base of the door, 8.3, and then I'm going to extrude that forwards by 0.3. Let's see if that looks like it's come forward enough. No, I'm actually going to go a little bit more than that. 0.5, tell it to join. Okay, so we've now got what looks like our doorway on the side there. This part is fitted after it's positioned, so I'm not going to bother drawing that. The same with this. What I'm going to do is this part next. Now this is, I think it's a grill. If we have a look, yeah, we've got a grill here. And the problem we've got with grills, printing them this fine in resin, it's not really going to show up particularly well. So I'm just going to draw the outer panel. Now you could do two options. You can either completely cut this out, make a little hole, and use some etch. I'm just going to recess it slightly just so that it looks different to the side paneling, and then I'm just going to paint it that dirty greyish brown colour. So unfortunately the dimensions of the grill are not on this side profile here, they're on what is the rear profile. If we look, this is the picture of the rear, you can see these, that's a, ignore this blue string coming down, it's holding the tarp. This grill and this grill, to me, look like they're exactly the same size as the front here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw these two here and then mirror across that mid-plane, that feature. So I'm drawing that on this front face here. So I'm going to create a sketch just like this. So we're going to start off with a rectangle shape. If we look at the scale drawing, it's 23 inches, 23.5 inches wide, 43 high. Okay, so 23.5 inches is 596 millimeters, and that was the width of it. So define that. 596.9. 596.9 divided by 148. That's the width. Height was 43 inches. 1092.2. 1092.2 divided by 148. I'm just going to drag this up a little bit. So we have measurements for distance, so that's not really the right measurement we're after. think it might be this one, 23 and a half, because that's saying 15 by 20 is that. So maybe 23 and a half across, because then that won't be overlapping. So we'll go with that. So 23.5 is 596.9. Right? Yeah, 596.6.9. So define that. Define edge. Oops, doesn't want to do it. Corner. Corner. Define that as 596.9 divided by 148. Okay, and then do we have the height recorded anywhere? So looking at the picture here, it's looking like Paul's showing us touching the bottom panel there. Look at the photograph, yes, that's what it looks like. It looks like it's touching the bottom there. So we can constrain corner to edge like that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is create an offset panel, and I'm only going to be having that as 0.25, and then I'm going to extrude that forward slightly, so I'm going to come forwards by 0.2, which will give us like a paneling effect forwards, so to join. Okay. And then I don't really need to recess that because it's already looking recessed as it is. Just lagging a little bit. So now I'm going to just mirror that across. So if we do mirror and then select feature, which is that rectangle we just drawn, mirror plane, it's going to be the centered one. That should copy that across to the other side, okay? Yep. Turn those back off. Then the next thing we're going to draw the next panel along. So the next panel is going to be the same height but by 41 inches. And then the gap's not being measured, so we're just going to do that by eye. So 41 inches works out as 1041.4. We create another sketch in Fusion. Define that. So 1041.4. 1041.4 divided by 148 for engage. And then we're going to horizontal and vertically snap that corner to that corner, so the height are going to be the same. You can then do the same with those bottom two corners there. Distance between them, because they're not measured on here unfortunately, we're just going to have to do this a little bit by eye. Unless that, no, it's not. So to me that looks like it's maybe what, 8 inches, maybe a foot. So I'm going to say 2mm gap between them. That sounds reasonable. Now if we have a look, how does that look with this gap left here? They're not too bad actually. Compare that distance to that distance. That looks about the same as the panel. So that if you to copy that panel across, bear in mind with this 8-inch gap here, copy that panel across, it's probably going to fit again there. I think if you were to do the same here, you'd probably get the same effect. Might actually just reduce that a little bit. So if we go 1.5 on that, that might make it look just a little tiny bit better. We'll do the same thing with the offset of 0.3, I think I said, and then extrude that. Now I can just select this front surface there and tell it to join, and it will snap to that front surface. Absolutely fine. So those two are the same height now. And again, we'll do the same thing. We can mirror that feature and we turn the construction planes back on. We can select that construction plane to mirror across on. So we've now got that on both sides. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to draw on the building here is this little plate that sits here. Now I'm assuming it's the same plate that would hold this box on here. And there's probably another one down the bottom here that would sit on. Yeah. So yeah, it looks like they're 15 by 20, 15 inches by 20 inches. So we can draw those. Because they're handed, we want to make sure we're drawing them on the right side. So it's going to be on the rear of the building here. Yeah, just draw on that surface there, a small rectangle. Okay, and if we jump into the internet, so 15 is 381 millimeters, and that's 15 across. That's the dimension there is, let's say it was 381 millimeters. 381 divided by 148, and the height is 508. 508 divided by 148. Okay, and then we just, I want to define that. I'm just going to drag that into position. So if we look at the picture, it's that one. Right up against, looks like it's right up against the upright here and about 8 to 10 inches above it. Define that to that corner. I'm going to go for 1.3 millimeters. I'm going to leave a gap here, just a small one, 0.3 millimeters, and I'm just going to drag this forward with an extrusion, only 0.2 millimeters, just to create that plate-like effect. Okay, I've created that as a new body, so that I can copy that, create a copy. We go to the top, and I'm going to drag that through. Doesn't matter which way around it is, because it's just a small plate, isn't it? Okay, and that sits down in here. Okay, now obviously if you look at that, that doesn't look, that's probably going to be overlapping that side panel. We're going to have to put it overlapping that side panel to maintain the same dimension. What I'm going to do is point to point that corner into that corner there. Okay, so we've got that little plate there, both sides, and then we've just got to combine body one with those two bodies there. Okay, so unfortunately we don't have any good photos which show the roof of the module itself. But one thing to note would be, if we look at the side views, we've got the drains on the side set at this height, and you can see there's two holes here. If we look at this one, which is the other type of module, the holes are repeated again here. So I'm going to guess that the roof is recessed down to this level, so that the water is obviously on the inside, because if it was just flat, it would just come over the side and wouldn't really matter. So I'm going to recess the roof on the model. So if we do a sketch on that top surface, we just do an offset, and we can come inwards, I don't know, maybe 0.8 millimeters, minus 0.8 millimeters, and then recess this down. I think it was 1.373 that we said was minus 1.373, which we said was the 8 inches. So that would give us that recessed effect, and then also you could have the holes on the side there. Okay, so I think that's most of the model done, all the detailing parts drawn on there. If you wanted to, one thing that you could do is to save a bit of resin, we create a sketch on this bottom surface. You could do one or two things. You could shell it out, or what I'm going to do is going to create an offset inwards by minus 1 millimeter, 1.2 millimeters, and then I'm going to create a center point rectangle. I'm just going to come across like this. I'm going to do that 1 millimeter wide. And I'm going to select these two parts here and extrude them up into the model, just to cut down the amount of resin that we're using. Obviously not going all the way up because we need to have part at the top here for the roof that we've recessed. So going up 16 millimeters. That's not going to save a lot. That might be 5p, 6p of resin, but look after the pennies and the pounds, look after themselves. And this centre beam here will act as like a bit of support to stop this potentially wanting to warp outwards. So that's pretty much all I'm going to do with this model. I'm going to then print this out, and then I can add it onto the bottom or onto the top of a flat wall wagon as a nice little load that makes it look quite interesting and different. Hope you've enjoyed watching today's episode. If you have, please press the like, subscribe, and obviously you can follow along on the crane build on the other playlist.